Time of Jacob's trouble. The expression, the time of Jacob's trouble, comes from Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 7. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even a time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. Jacob himself was the father of the nation of Israel, and was himself given the name Israel by God. The time of Jacob's trouble is also known as the Tribulation. It is specifically the time of judgment on the Jewish nation and all who have not accepted Jesus Christ as their Lord and Saviour. Jesus also refers to this period in Matthew chapter 24, verse 21. There then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. The doctrine of the tribulation is something that has been taught throughout church history, and the description of the tribulation period is given in the book of Revelation. My main purpose here is to go through the timeline of events. The tribulation is a period of 7 years, which was prophesied in Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 to 27. The angel Gabriel gives Daniel understanding about the future. He talks about a period of 70 weeks, which are actually weeks of years, but only 69 weeks have been fulfilled. You can read more about this on the website page entitled The 70 Weeks of Daniel. The final week of years, 7 years, remains unfulfilled. This is the period known as the Tribulation. The period will start with a covenant with many, which indicates some kind of agreement or treaty. Halfway through the week, the Antichrist will set up an abomination in the temple in Jerusalem. Jesus speaks about this in Matthew chapter 24, verses 15 to 16. When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. The second half of the tribulation, the second 3.5 years, is known as the Great Tribulation. This is specifically the time of judgment that will be the worst period in the history of the world. The 7 years are years of 360 days each, and each year is referred to as a time. You can read more about this on the web page entitled The 360-Day Prophetic Year. Jesus returns at the end of the 7-year period. 1 year is 360 days, so 7 years are 2,520 days. The period is split into 2 halves of 1,260 days each. The various judgments listed in the book of Revelation occur during this period. Daniel is given a further revelation about the time of the end, and specifically 2 time periods, one of 1,290 days and the other of 1,335 days. Daniel chapter 12, verses 11 to 12. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 2,305 and 30 days. The end of the 7 years, 2,520 days, Jesus will return to rule the world. See the web page on the 1,000-year millennial reign for more information on this. Satan will be cast into a bottomless pit at this point. It appears from the previous passage that the abomination in the temple is probably not removed until 1,290 days after the midpoint of the tribulation period. That is 30 days after Jesus returns. It's not clear why there is this delay. There is a blessing for those believers who, having survived the tribulation, make it to 1,335 days, which is 70 days after the end of the tribulation period and the return of Jesus. Some commentators believe that this is the time of the sheep and goat judgment of Matthew 25. Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 34. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. So there will be a separation of the sheep and the goats. Those who have taken the mark of the beast during the tribulation are the goats. Those who accepted Jesus as Lord during tribulation are the sheep. The sheep are blessed and will continue through to the millennial era, the goats departing to everlasting fire. Notice that in the Bible there are different categories of believers. There are the Old Testament believers, such as Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, who all believed on the Messiah to come, although obviously they weren't able to ascend to heaven until Jesus had won his final victory on the cross. There are the church age believers, that is, all who have believed in Jesus Christ as their Lord and Saviour from the time of Christ up until the rapture. So the age we're currently living in is the church age, and all believers are church age believers. The tribulation martyrs, referred to in Revelation, are those who died for their faith during the 7-year tribulation. The sheep mentioned above are believers who survive the tribulation and go on to the millennial age. All these people receive their salvation through faith in Jesus Christ. If you find this subject matter interesting, you can get more information at prophecy-workshop.com. Thank you for listening.